It's a great pleasure to be here. I have a great challenge speaking after you and actually coming between people and their beds. So I will try to do my best to do two things, to make you love technology and alternatively to fear technology. So you have two options, either to like it or just to fear it. I will try to use this. So this is a lecture that I often give to MBA people. And as Zeev said, I'm completely not a doctor and I know nothing about IVF. So that really puts me in a good position to talk about this. I'm going to present a general model for you to think about new information technology. And there is a test at the end. So make sure you listen well. I always find the mentioning of tests puts everybody on alert. It just really helps people. So I'm going to start with defining a few things. First of all, what is information technology? Information technology is anything that is not our business. It is the information that connects with what we call business processes. What is a business process? When we do marketing, when we do sales, when we do product development, when we do customer relationship, when we deal with our employees, etc. These are business processes, and we have information technology that supports or enhance these business processes. So these are the two things I'm suggesting as core concept for my talk. What is the problem? The problem is that we have too many new technologies out there, and fortunately or unfortunately, they totally affect our business processes. And I'm going to start with a question. First of all, how many people here, show of hands, are actually managing or directing an IVF unit? Please. Great. So that would be 90% of the people. How many people are actually supporting them with products and services? Okay, the rest. So that's good. And this talk is really directed at IVF, I would say, owners or directors, and their constant struggle to manage their clinic on one hand and to do it efficiently in this new environment. And we start with a set of quick questions. How many people here use Google Plus in this room? Okay. How many people know about, just know about, don't use Pinterest.com? Okay. That's 3%. I'm trying to use percentages based on your talk. How many people here installed Unity 3D? That's a hard one. None? So that's 90% decrease right there, right? It's unbelievable. How many people here use or know about Ping FM? One person, two people, great. Three. How many people have closed their Plaxo account? Very good. You should talk to her. That's a sign of an advanced person. And how many people do not manage their Zing account? Very good. So you come from Europe and you made the right decision. So here, by simply asking a few questions, I already know who are the cool people in the audience. Because I know that they know their technology. This is a very, very simple way, because once you know what's out there, you can make the decision whether you want to use it and how. My goal in this talk is not actually to talk about specific technologies, although I will do that just to give you a few things so you can go back to your husbands and wives and mention that you know more things. I'm really here to give you a general thinking model, which I call NITA. It's a general new information technology algorithm that helps you make the decision whether to use a new technology and when. And essentially, I start with a very simplistic model. A particular technology for a person or a firm or an IVF unit in this case can be in one of the following 5 phases. It can be missing, it can be emerging, it can be existing, it can be declining, or it can be dying. In one of the previous lectures, somebody said, well, you cannot be dying. You're either alive or dead. So, but we will see how I will convince you that that is not the case. So what are these phases? These phases represents a particular phase in the life of a particular technology when it comes to you. It can be a personal thing or it can be an organizational thing. And what I'm going to do in the following 10 or 15 minutes, I'm just going to give you examples, because I think by examples you will get the feel of how this model actually works. I'm actually using examples from different kind of technologies. Some of them are very advanced and we'll only talk to the woman over here. But that's okay, because I'm supporting of everybody. So I'm going to start with an interesting piece of technology, which is called ECHO. I will tell you a little bit about that in a second. And the way this model works is that you have essentially a calendar of years right here, and then you will have events here, and using this model I will explain to you the nature of the model. So in 1990 I had the need to take notes. I went to Harvard, and obviously in Harvard they talk a lot, and I wanted to write something, and I had really need something to organize my notes. So I started to use Microsoft Word at the time, and it didn't work up so well. There was no hierarchy. I couldn't save it, and then some of the classes didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And I went back to paper. Anyhow, what is the situation? I am in a need. So the technology is missing. This is an important point, because often we start with a need. I would phrase it in the earlier terms, a business process need. Next, 1994, I actually found an interesting technology. It was introduced to me by a friend, and it was called ECHO, which is a piece of software that really allows you to write comments and write them in a hierarchical way, like that. And essentially what was unique about this is that it stored the hierarchy each time you saved the document. So each time you changed it, it saved it. Each time you open and close nodes, it simply kept it that way. So I used it in multiple ways, and I started to actually have everything on it. Notes, tests, dates, little notes, other things, etc., etc., etc. And I actually used that a lot. I use that almost on a daily basis. So at this point, the technology is really, really existing. I'm actually making heavy, heavy use of that thing. But then slowly, a few things happen. First of all, I started to move the business of tasks to something else. Because for some strange reason, when I was just a student and I had nobody to tell what to do, then it was fine to keep it in the notes. But suddenly when I had the distribution of teams and people and I need to distribute that, then this system no longer made sense for me. So I kept it just for notes. And mostly after about a year, it really was just for old notes, because I stopped taking notes. Then I've reached the point which we often like to call EOL, which basically stands for end of life. End of life is the wonderful state when you can actually say, I do not need this technology anymore. So I moved everything out, I killed it, and actually the death blow was when I moved from, finally I had to close my XP account and move to Windows 7 because the actual software did not work on Windows 7. Echo, rest in peace. I did a final backup. I removed all the auto links from all the system, and I published a goodbye message in Facebook. And this is like, if you're familiar with the stages of mourning, the psychological, this is like when you say it's on, when you actually tell the world you have stopped using Echo in Facebook, then it really means you separated from the software. This is an important example because once you understand that the technology has a lifespan and it will die, usually before you, then you no longer need to fear it, right? It's just another technology. And the nice thing about a technology, that it will be replaced by another one. Remember that. So if you fear iPhone, do not worry, because there's iPhone 4. And if you fear iPhone S, then there's a 5 and 6, so don't worry about it. Next example is Twitter. How many people here are familiar with Twitter? Heard about Twitter? Great, 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 great. So here is an opposite situation of a particular technology. So first of all, 2006, I completely did not have a need for Twitter. I'm not sure I have a need for it today, but clearly in 2006, I did not have a need for it. But then in 2007, this is actually when I prepared this talk, I actually went and looked for the email that I got from the founder of Twitter. I was somehow put on his mailing list, and he sent me this email. There's been a bunch of forward motion at Twitter headquarters in the last 2 weeks, blah, 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 blah. So I got a signal from out there that Twitter is emerging to be something interesting. This is an important point in the life of technology, because you're always getting these signals from the world that the technology is out there. What is the question? What to do with these signals? That is the question. So I said to myself, knowing my own model, that what I need to do at this point is to check it once a month, just to look at it, read emails, connect it with LinkedIn. There was a mechanism as to how to do it. And then connect it with Facebook, but then stop the connection because it was just crowding the information. So I started to use this. Then, later on, I connected with something called Ping FM. Ping FM, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a universal engine that allows you to control all your social network in one place. So you essentially write to Ping FM, and the message will go to Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., etc., etc. I did reconnect Twitter to Facebook. I started to use lists, which is an advanced feature of Twitter. I did a Google trigger that basically said if the word Yesha is mentioned in Twitter, I need to know about that. I need to know about that because somebody mentioned me in Twitter and I need to reply to that. By the way, this thing stopped working after about 3 years. Why? From a business reason, Twitter did not allow Google anymore to index their content, and that's no longer relevant. And finally, I understood something that is quite interesting about Twitter, especially if you compare it with Facebook. One of the benefits of Twitter is the fact that you can only use 140 characters. Now, when you only use 140 characters, something happens. You actually have to think about what you want to write, because you can't just blah, blah, blah. And apparently, that is a very good thing, because if you have to think, then that creates a barrier for people to blah, blah, blah. So in a sense, Twitter today has more valuable content than Facebook, which is an interesting perspective on how you collect information. Another example which brings you a different perspective and maybe close to your heart is my very, very emotional experience moving from my beloved Nokia E61 to the iPhone. This was truly an Armageddon. Really a major, major, major confusion. Why? Because I simply loved this phone. It was just a great thing. Everything worked. I was an admirer of, I was in love with E61. I was so much in love with E61 that when the E71 came out, I bought a poster and put it in my room. Fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you do it, we had an introduction of the iPhone. And that looks indeed quite interesting. And I said to myself, I need to start to experiment with that and notice that this model facilitates sort of a parallel process. It is the case where you have one technology and another technology is emerging. So you want to work together. So I started to hear about it, and I thought it was just a toy. But then what happened? I started to use it more and more. Initially, I used it for email and a camera. And in parallel, I continued to use the E61 as a phone. Actually, I must admit here, because we are close friends, that the reason I moved finally from the E61 to the iPhone was the mere fact that the E61 died. And I simply did not have the ability to buy another E61. Not that I did not look. There was no one to sell me an E61. And I had to move to the iPhone. And of course, I just tore my head off and said, why didn't I do that 2 years earlier? Because I had them. You have to understand, I had them both. I was walking with them both. I don't know if Zev, if you remember that period of time. Dark time in my life. The E61 died. Was not planned, and I moved to the iPhone. Only then I understand the value and the connectivity with the address book and all the benefits that the iPhone is actually giving us. Yet another example, which is quite interesting, is the example of Dropbox. How many people here are familiar with Dropbox? Those who are not familiar with Dropbox may leave now, because just no point to you. So, this is a wonderful tool. I started to heard it, and I needed some backup. Now, interestingly enough, this Dropbox business has the capability to simply propagate itself more and more and more. So when I started to use it, I only used it with one project because they were remote, but suddenly something else wanted, and then 2 months later, I was paying them $99 a year to get multiple storage for that. It's basically a mechanism to synchronize and backup with your files. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful tool. So initial use, after a long fear, because I didn't want to install anything, I actually installed it. I tested it for personal use, then for shared use, and it worked like magic. And when it worked like magic, I just purchased the disk. I loaded on the iPhone, I loaded on the iPad, I'm using it from the web, and I'm sharing it now with 4 different teams doing the 4 different projects. So when something works well, do not hesitate to use it. If it works well for you, just start using it quickly. In the same way, when it stops working, stop using it and kill it. Today, there are lots of things that I am missing. I do not have something to manage yet my business cards. And it's interesting because for the last 10 years, I say I must have something to manage my business cards. But unfortunately, I never found the energy nor the time. And frankly, I don't think there is really a need now to do that because everything is managed in LinkedIn. You really get the business card in LinkedIn if you want it. So that need, which I didn't solve, actually dissipated. I am looking still for something to manage my pictures. There's something phenomenal with pictures. Once you have a digital camera, you never have pictures, right? How many people here are using their iPhones or Android to take pictures, right? How many people here have actually bothered to do with anything with these pictures except posting them on Facebook? Well, you're good. Maybe you can teach us. But this is a paradox of technology. The availability of the technology really killed. I have 4 kids, by the way, all boys. One of them created by Zevik, by the way. Thank you very much. The last one doesn't have pictures. He had actually to do Photoshop of his kid in order to show a picture of himself. No pictures, nothing printed. That's it. So this is a collection of things that I still don't have, so there is a need. Last but not least, how many people here heard about Pinterest? Okay, so this is a fascinating thing because it is exactly the kind of technology that I, at this point in my life, completely do not understand why you even need it. It's so wonderful, but what are the triggers for me to pay attention to this technology? Look at that. So the triggers are, people are writing about it, more people are writing about it. It was easy for me to try it, which means the barrier for entry was not so complicated. This is a very important point for any technology. If it is used for porn, then it's meaningful. This is a very important point. Think about it. Sort of connecting with the most basic needs. But today, I still don't get it. And it may be the case that it will be exactly like Twitter, which took 4 years for me to actually understand what it is. I was there, I knew about it, and I made a conscious decision not to do anything about it. So, in conclusion, this is sort of the general framework of how to use new information technology. You have a bunch of questions over here that basically it is the kind of things you do when you are in this phase. You take the technology and you ask these questions. You explore them. You experiment if it's emerging. You are ongoing exploring it if it's an existing technology. If you have a technology, say for example, like Dropbox, that you are now identifying as an existing technology, then go on and continue explore all its features. Do not settle by just putting it on your laptop. Use it on your iPhone or Android device. See what you can do with it. Automatically synchronize it. Use it. Use all the features because you have already committed to it. When you feel something is declining, make sure, for example, that you don't get locked psychologically like I did with the E61. This is pathetic. Really. It's just a technology and it will die. Make sure you understand the value, not the instrument. So make sure that you are following and looking for a replacement because you know that it is declining. Make sure you can liberate your data. That is often something that we talk about. Make sure the characteristic of a good technology is that you can transfer the data out there. Liberate. And then you always have the question whether to keep the particular technology or move it to the other phase. So it's always this question. And at the last, that's the reason I'm keeping the term dying, because often technology that die suddenly reemerge because the replacement did not work. So if you really don't want to kill it all the way, you still want to keep it. Maybe you need a backup, maybe you need to take something out of it, etc., etc. This is, of course, a work in progress, and I've implementing this in a lot of models in banking, in cybersecurity, in internet technology, etc. There are some key points that I want to mention that are sort of more reflective about this sort of a second-level analysis of this thing, which is data liberation is critical. Easy glide in, the easy glide out is an important characteristic of these new technologies. And be very careful not to lock in. There's an issue of time invested. And one of the things that I've noticed is that there are many more technologies out there, and therefore much more time is needed to explore them. You need to have an experimentation area where you can try new things. So like an old laptop where you want to install new things and play with it something that would be an example. In an enterprise setting, that would be a virtual machine that allows you to play with it. And of course, you have to distinguish between big changes that calls for a very well and meticulous plan, like, for example, moving from Office 2003 to 2010, or completely moving from E61 Nokia to iPhone. That's a big change. And small changes, like stop using Plaxo or installing. You have to identify what's a big change or small change that will give you the energy how to think about it. We now arrived at the test. So what I ask you to do now is to look at this list and give yourself, it's self-grading, it's patient with doctor together, right? It's not that I'm telling you. So for every one of these things, please say yes or no. So for example, if you are using Gmail and Docs and application, and you've actually used it for collaboration, then it's okay to say yes. If you are using Facebook, say yes. If you have a website, but you update it all the time, and if your year at the website is indeed 2012 and not less, then you can say yes. If you have a smartphone and using it, smartphone will be an iPhone or I wouldn't say Nokia. Right? No, not Nokia. If you have a tablet and you're using it, if you have Dropbox and you're using it, if you are a member of a professional community, like the one Zev is running here, or like the one we saw in the Dutch example, a member of a professional community, you understand, maybe a group in Facebook in your field. If you are using Skype, how many people here are using Skype? Yeah, so at least 1 point. If you have a profile in LinkedIn, and if you used profile to hire somebody or to look for employees, and if you use YouTube not just to watch, but you've also uploaded a movie. I will give you 2 minutes, please. I'm going to ask individual people, so you better be ready, right? So, how many people here got 7 and up? 7 and up. 7 and up. So 7 and up is great. I'm not going to ask what happened to the other. Shall I ask? Okay. Statistics, risk mitigation, very good. So how many people here got less, 5 or less? 5 or less. How many people here are lying right now? No, not you. No. You're okay. Yes, I know. So really what I'm really trying to tell you in terms of this particular list, and this list is changing all the time, this is not future, this is current, day-to-day, basic tools that any professional should have a mastery of. Let me be very clear about that. We can argue about that and maybe write a paper on it. But what I am proposing here is that you really need to have 7 and up in this list. Okay. We have an argument here about risk mitigation here. We will talk about that later. All of these things are tools that create immediate value and have passed beyond what I call the point of refutation in terms of their value. And I want to conclude by stating the following. If you don't embrace the future will not embrace you. Thank you very much.